you're a Cleveland Browns fan looking for a break from the emotional roller coaster that is the price we pay from loving then hating our Browns, then a big welcome to Cleveland Browns Anonymous, a group therapy podcast to help you survive the season. So let's start our meeting. Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley with Brook with the Cleveland Browns Anonymous. And today's episode is what Miles heard from Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. So, Brook, we're at a real low point here in Browns Nation. There's a lot of people need these Cleveland Browns Anonymous meetings, right? So you want to start us off?
I mean, I don't think the vibes have ever been lower. I think at least with like 0-16, there was like some talent on it, but most of these guys, were practice squad guys, and you had Hugh Jackson. So the vibes are so low now because this team does have talent. They have a 2-time coach of the year. This team just sucks.
Yeah, and we have the talent. That's the thing. Browns Nation, we planted a secret bug in the office when Miles met with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. So we're going to get in the details of what Miles heard. And after that meeting, Miles walks out and he wants to get traded. So obviously what happened in that room is not what Miles wanted to hear. And Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski didn't achieve what I think was their goal, which was to keep Miles in the house. So what exactly did transpire in that? Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, past events are the best predictor of future events, right, Brooke? Is that the way it goes?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So I'm sure Miles sat down, good cheer around the table. Miles, thanks for coming in. I know you want to know what our plan is going forward. And the first thing out of Kevin's mouth is, I just got to learn to coach better. And as soon as he said that, Miles is probably thinking to himself, where have I heard that before? He's only heard that probably over 24 times. Every time they screw up. He heard that after the Patriots, led by, who was their former quarterback that they cut?
I think he's on our team.
No. Well, everybody has a stay in Cleveland.
Bailey Zappi?
No, not Bailey Zappi. I think it was
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. Mac Jones against the Joe Woods-led defense carved up the Browns. I think they scored over 40 points. Next year, Mac Jones comes to Cleveland against the Joe Woods defense, and he gets another 40 points. And I remember after the first debacle in New England, Miles was very upset at the coaching, Joe Woods, saying that we weren't prepared, we were confused out there. So we went through 2 years of confusion with Joe Woods. And it all culminated, of course, with the New York Jets, led by Joe Flacco, who's, 2 touchdowns in a minute. Guys wide open, defensive backs confused. And what did Coach Kevin Stefanski do after that game? He said, we got to coach better. We got to coach better. We got to coach better after every game that Watson was overthrowing receivers, calling the wrong protection scheme, taking an 8-step drop instead of a 4-step drop. Linemen didn't know where Deshaun Watson was in the pocket. Watson was jumping around, trying to make something happen, and he gets sacked, he gets fumbled, whatever. And after each of those games, Coach Stefanski says, we got to coach better. And that's what Miles was probably hearing. There's no plan there. It's the definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over again, hoping it's going to change. Thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, I don't think Kevin Stefanski told Miles I need to coach better. I think that's all just his saying to the media and to the fans because he's not going to give away information. I think they sat down and the Browns told Miles what their plan was, and Miles didn't like it. So what that tells me is I'm trying to I have a couple thoughts. One, it really sucked seeing Miles paraded around the Super Bowl and he's just going interview after interview and he's just saying, I don't want to be here. And, the radio guys are asking him, what would it take? And he says, nothing. I'll do whatever it takes. So part of me's kind of like, you know what? You don't want to be here? Get lost. I don't care. I want guys who do want to be here. And he's talented. He's super talented. Get a haul for him. But I have a feeling that they told Miles what their plan was, and Miles said, all right, I don't agree with that. So I'm going to try to seek a trade. So if I'm Miles, what they probably told him was we're going to rebuild.
What do you think they're going to do with Nick Chubb?
He's probably gone.
Wow.
Denzel, he might be gone. Joe Batonio, he already said, I can't go through another rebuild. That's just, in my opinion, the options at quarterback are pretty bleak. If you're the best free agent available is Kirk Cousins.
I keep saying Daniel Jones.
So, but I don't agree with you that Kevin Stefanski sat down and told him, I have to coach better. I'm sure that was a part of it, but I'm sure they got into specifics on what they're going to do with this number 2 pick. And Miles is like, you know what? I want to be on a contender. They've already come out and said, they're not going to trade him, but that's to drive up the price.
Right.
The smart thing to do if you're going to rebuild is to trade him.
Yeah.
And
well, that opens up the floodgates. Denzel, Batonio retiring,
next season is it's gonna be bleak. And I think, I was listening to the radio this morning on my way to work, and everyone's saying that this quarterback class isn't that great, which is just like the cherry on top because you have this number 2 pick. And if there was a Drake May in this class or a Jaden Daniels, even a Bo Nix, that would give fans some hope that, okay, yeah, there's a couple guys here who we can take a shot at. But if the consensus is the majority of these pundits are saying that these guys aren't super high, then, I think you've got to just take best player available and just start building the trenches, whether that's defensive line, offensive line, just follow the blueprint of what the Lions did. I go back to something that I wish they would have considered was if Stefanski has lost the locker room and the mere fact that his best player wants to leave this team isn't a great indicator of who he is as a coach. I'm pissed that they let Mike Vrabel just walk out the door. If you're going to rebuild Jimmy Haslam, then just, start from the studs. But they're not.
Well, you also have Andrew Berry, who you've got to wonder whether Stefanski. Well, this is all I've said in past podcasts. Stefanski's got some terrible cards to play, but they are very good at, as an organization, they seem to be losing the locker room. They talk about, what's when Stefanski came in, he's talked about character and tough, accountable, stuff like that. And they just make a mockery out of that.
Yeah. They take Odell.
They let Odell walk. They basically let Odell dictate to them what he wanted to do. Same thing with Clowney. Clowney's going to sit. I'm playing. These guys, Baker should have sat. Deshaun obviously should have sat, after the Dallas debacle, he should have sat down, or not even started, because it was clear in preseason that Watson was terrible. The offense looked terrible. So this whole notion of accountability is just more corporate organizational speak. There's no Bill Parcells here. There's no, and that's the sad part of alienating the fan base. They treat this fan base like chumps, what they tell them in public. Nobody's saying he shouldn't have said that. OBJ shouldn't have said that. He not only lost the locker room, he divided the locker room, but, that wasn't helpful to develop Baker Mayfield, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Baker Mayfield's playing with a bad shoulder.
Yeah, they should have sat him.
They should have sat him.
You're getting surgery.
And they should have sat him, and they should have said what everybody else, it's all out there. Why do you have to hide it?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows what's going on. It's like them coming out and saying the sky is red. No, the sky is blue. Everybody knows the sky is blue. Why are you saying it's red? What, are you going to get in trouble if you say it's blue? If you say it's true? And, again, I've said past podcasts, you don't hear that from great coaches. Just go on YouTube, Parcells, Lombardi, Bill Walsh. Now, maybe everybody's trying to follow the Bill Belichick mold. Well, Bill Belichick doesn't have Tom Brady. He's not a very good coach. But getting back to Stefanski's been coach of the year twice. The formula seems to be get me a serviceable quarterback, a Jacoby Brissett, right? An elderly Joe Flacco. And I can do magic with that. A Case Keenum. When Case Keenum did a playoff run, people forget that when he was with the Vikings. Stefanski was his quarterback coach, OC, and they read the bootleg play. Case Keenum, he did wonders with these guys. You get a Watson or a Baker who maybe is a type A personality, wants to do it his way. I don't think Stefanski knows how to coach guys like that because it requires a little confrontation. Now, you're sitting down. You're not running the play. You're sitting down. OBJ, you're not going anywhere. Okay, you're suspended unless you apologize to Baker. Baker, you're sitting down. That kind of tough love needs to be in the toolbox of any head coach.
I don't know. I mean, I've said it in the other podcasts. I just want my quarterback. That's it. I want that young guy. I want that Joe Burrow,
Jaden Allen. It's not happening this year, right? It's not happening. They're not there. Well, and nobody thought Jaden Daniels was going to be who he was, right? Maybe they are there and we don't even know it. Mahomes goes to the 10th spot, right? When the KC drafted him, where did Lamar end up? Bottom, the last of the 6 QB. I mean, and look at Trevor Lawrence. He's not having a good season. He seems to be following the Baker road where they got to hit rock bottom. So
I don't know.
I know, but Baker's not. But look at Jared Goff. I will repeat what I said in our last podcast. I think the Browns should keep Miles. They've got 13 picks. They get the Penn State guy.
Here's the problem. If they keep Miles isn't going to play.
Fine, he's suspended. Right? Yeah.
What's the value in that?
He may turn around.
When has that ever happened in the NFL?
I don't know. It's happened before. It's happened on the Cowboys. I remember there's some players that sat out. No. I think the Browns, if they get a very good draft, they could make a run for the playoffs. I really do. With a competent quarterback. With a good offensive coordinator.
So who's your quarterback?
I think they should go the Sam Darnold route and go for a Daniel Jones. I think they should get a guy. Daniel Jones, to me, had a terrible O-line with the Giants. Even Saquon Barkley couldn't move the ball. That line was so bad. You've got a guy who's just been beat. Think about how Barkley played so well with the Eagles.
Well, it's the best offensive line in the
Right.
league.
We've got Conklin. We got two good centers. Bitonio could come back. You got Wyatt Teller. You get a stud left tackle. I mean, you get a stud left tackle. You get our guy from Ohio State, our second round, third round pick, Hall. He was coming on. You get that defensive line. Hopefully JOK comes back. I mean, you've got the pieces there. Njoku, Judy, Cedric Tillman was coming along, and they got all these draft picks. And I think they show Miles, this is the team here.
Clearly showed him what their plan was and
Right.
said, I'm out.
Okay. But you're not going anywhere.
I just don't see the value in that.
Well, maybe he sees what the team looks like, how they're playing, and he reconsiders. But I think the Browns got to stop caving. They caved to OBJ. They let Baker dictate him keep playing. Wasn't like Baker. Baker was trying to be Baker, type A guy, leader in the clubhouse. I'm playing. I'm going to play through that. And he got worse and worse, culminating with, TJ Watt's 4 sacks. And then he threw 4 picks against Green Bay. The Browns need to stop letting players dictate to them, whether it's OBJ, whether it's Baker, or it's Clowney. That's a very bad organizational habit. So hey, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not up on my NFL rules, but what's to say they hold out on Miles, they suspend him, doesn't play, doesn't want to reconsider? They could still trade him, right?
His value goes down.
And how does his value go down?
Because the more he doesn't play, the older he's going to get.
Well, like the way Deshaun Watson's value went down? That's another guy, Deshaun Watson. And you know what I can't believe? And I sent an email to Terry Pluto. I can't believe the Texans paid Watson when he sat out. I mean, what? You talk about lack of accountability. Here's a guy who's got a rich contract, who's sitting out. They know what's going on with this massage stuff. They know what's going on. And yet they keep paying the guy. I wouldn't pay him. And yet look who comes along. The Cleveland Browns. And the Texans get 3 draft picks. So I'm sorry, Brooke, but I'm going to have to disagree on this. I don't think in the world of NFL, there's always going to be the sucker at the poker table. There's going to be some owner like the Jets, right? The Jets would pay a king's ransom for Miles, even if he sat out, right?
The most you're going to get, the longer it waits, the less you're going to get.
Well, this is where...
Because teams know, they're not, okay, he's not going to play. I'm just going to wait.
Some other team may not want that. They may think, hey, I'm on the verge of getting the Super Bowl if I get this guy. So, well, look, we agree to disagree. But I think let's see where we are on our big draft podcast. We're going to let this kind of marinate. So, Browns Nation, all our loyal listeners out there, we will have a major podcast after the draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if Miles is still around. What do you think the price for Miles would be? Why don't we end on this note? Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
Getting your house ready to sell, or you just need some basic repairs, and you can't get anybody to come out or even return your phone call. Then call Riley Painting and Contracting, your home mechanics, for all of your home repair needs, from electrical, plumbing, roof repairs, and getting your house ready to sell. 45 years in the business, a AAA on the Better Business Bureau, and we're on the preferred contractor list in Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights. You can contact us by calling 216-371-8160. and leave a message. And guess what? We'll call you back.
I mean, every team is going to call. He's 1A, if not 1B, in terms of best defensive player available.
Yeah. A 1 and a 2 this year, a 1 next year.
I mean, it's been said that what Andrew Berry wants, and it's smart, I would want the same thing, is it's definitely a first-round pick, second-round pick, and a young player who they can take.
Right. And a 1 next year.
Yeah, maybe.
How's that? That's a king's ransom.
They've been floating it out there like, what if the Patriots call and they say, we'll give you number 4 for this year.
Yeah, you get a great left tackle for that.
Do that.
Yeah.
If it's the Philadelphia Eagles, the 32nd pick,
Forget it.
I would say, yeah, but I want one of your studs on the defensive line.
Right.
So it all kind of depends on what the team is. I think what's going to happen is the Commanders, because they want to go all in, which is smart because they've got this rookie sensation.
Right.
They want to capitalize on having a rookie quarterback contract, so you get a first this year and maybe a first next year. I would do that too, because there's no guarantee that he's going to be that good next year.
Right.
But a team like the Eagles or the Bills, I don't want to do that because
it's too low.
Their pick is, 26 or 20,
Yeah, you get a 1 and a 2 for Miles. That's some playmakers there.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying, is that you're only going to get your best offer. Like, the more it drags out, the less the offer is. So,
well, and I will give you that, Brooke. That's if they are driving up the price for Miles, but you lose the ability to benefit on this draft that they have.
Well, exactly. And it's like, if I'm a GM, if I'm Andrew Berry, I want to get this. If you're going to trade him, you get this done before the draft so that you've got as much capital as you can. Because, let's be honest, they do need to rebuild. They screwed up everything when they
went all in for Watson. Yeah.
And I'm sure Miles, hey, I've never met Miles, but everything I see about him, he seems like a real stand-up guy.
Yeah. If
I'm him and I have to share a locker room with this creep, he's probably like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, he could, yeah.
So I think
you kind of wonder whether they had conversations during the season. Like, what is going on here?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And guys like him, guys like Joe Batonio, like the real captains of this team, are like,
Chubb, the joke.
If I'm him, I'm like, if I was them, I'd be like, you had your guy here in Baker, and you screwed up by letting him dictate if he was going to play, even though you knew his shoulder was injured.
Right.
And you let him just walk out the door. Like, I wish I had a crystal ball to go back in time. And if we would have kept Baker, who was perfect for this city, he was this, he loved Cleveland.
Yeah.
He was this underdog. He didn't take shit.
And he was a great quarterback his first year.
Great quarterback.
How many touchdowns did he have in his first year?
He set the record
for a rookie. Yeah.
I'm sure Miles and Joel are like, oh, finally, we got our guy.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of watching, and they're like, so you dropped this guy for this guy?
Yeah.
They're probably like, clock's ticking.
Yeah.
What's your plan? Oh, we're going to draft Shedeur Sanders. I'm out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, folks, I led you on. We didn't have a bug in the room, but it would have been nice to be a fly in the wall to actually hear the back and forth. So, all right, we're going to, we may have an emergency podcast if Miles gets traded. Personally, I'd trade Denzel and Miles, and I'll throw it out for here. I think there are a lot of great players, not quarterbacks in this draft. There's some amazing offensive linemen. There is, this could be a Herschel Walker type trade.
Ironically, they're saying this is one of the best drafts for defensive line.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and Denzel, you got to wonder his concussions. That's kind of scary. And I hate to say it, Miles too. Miles is there's some miles on that
miles on the miles
on that treadwear.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if Miles was like 24,
Yeah.
I'd be like, no way.
Yeah, and he hasn't had a serious injury. So, and can you imagine him having an injury like TJ Watt all of a sudden, second game of the season? I mean, look what happened with the Mavericks. They make that trade. They make that trade to LA, and second game, Anthony Davis is hurt, going to miss a month. Can you imagine? I mean, Denzel, same thing. I mean, if Denzel gets 60% of his games in, that's a good season. So what could you get, for Denzel? Second round? Be huge.
I think everyone is on the table.
Yeah. And then who knows? Batonio may not. I mean, if they get a draft haul coming in, defensive line, offensive line, they get that guy Carter or Abdul from Penn State. I don't know. They've got a lot of pieces to work with. They can really build a team. I know drafts are a crapshoot, but if they just go best player available, they could easily get 4 all-pro type picks in this draft. And you know what? I've been on Andrew Berry and Stefanski for this Watson fiasco, but I got to give some props to Andrew Berry. I don't think his drafts have been that bad for what he's had to work with. It's going to be really interesting to see with the kind of draft capital he has this year. He's got a number 1. I mean, he's picking guys like Martin Emerson, JOK, Njoku. I mean, those are great drafts that Andrew Berry had. And look what he did picking up, who's the guy we got from the Cowboys? Just fleeced him.
Oh,
Amari Cooper. They got 2 good years out of Amari Cooper. Jerry Jeudy for 6th round. I mean, it's like, unfortunately for Andrew Berry, I mean, this guy he's a gunslinger.
Not my dream, but what I would do is I would trade Miles now, or not now, but like.
Oh, drag it out. Get in a bidding war. Kind of like the Browns.
The draft. Take best player at 2, Abdul Carter, if he's there. Whoever you trade with, let's say it's the Commanders, take best player available. And if you like one of these quarterbacks who, because the thing that's been said a lot is that the 2 names of the quarterbacks are Cam Ward and Shador.
Right.
But a lot of these pundits are saying, the gap between those 2 guys and the next 2 isn't that big. But these guys are getting all this hype because it's Deion's son, and
they got to nail the draft with everybody but a quarterback. I don't think that quarterback's there. They got to get 4, 5 best players available if they're going to trade Miles. They got 2. They're obviously going to get a number 1 this year and a 2 for Miles, and maybe a 1 the next year. And if Denzel wants to go, fine. Who wants Denzel? Who wants to make a run? Okay, give me your number 1. All of a sudden now, you get that first round defensive tackle. You get Abdul Carter right there. Okay. And you get your left tackle. And then, so yeah, I think they're going to drive that price up. And it's going to be interesting. I just, fingers crossed. And Stefanski's got players that want to play for him.
So what would you do if it's draft night, Miles got traded, number 2 pick, and they come out and they say Browns have drafted Shador Sanders?
Depends on what we got for Miles. We got to get there. We got a lot of holes to fill. We got to get that left tackle. We got to get help on the defensive line, right? Now, we're not going to get another Miles, but we got to get somebody close to a Miles, right?
Yeah.
And I think I keep thinking about the Geno Smith, the Jared Goffs, the Sam Darnolds. Really, do we want to, fingers crossed, getting these young guys as quarterbacks?
Yeah, the problem is that I know we're running long, but the problem is, again, it goes back to Watson. You were so hamstrung by his contract that you can't get Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is get a guy like a Kirk Cousins for $1 million.
I think you could get a Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones on the right team. See, you guys.
But I don't think the Vikings are going to let him go.
No, I'm not talking about Sam. I'm talking about Daniel Jones.
Is playing for the Vikings.
Really?
They picked him up because they knew
Sam Darnold's going to go?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Sorry, guys. Wasting everybody's time here.
So, the fact that your options are Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, it's just making me just icky,
Well, again, I know we keep repeating ourselves, but Stefanski seems to have fairy dust magic with these reclamation projects. And who knows? It could be Joe Flacco. I would take Joe. Imagine people saying,
I would take Joe.
Just going, Miles Garrett, you know what? Fuck you, Browns. Miles Garrett, Denzel's going. This team, blah. Oh, they just signed Joe Flacco? Really? You get Joe Flacco? And who knows? You know what? We've got to get back to what makes the Browns successful in these last couple of years. Run heavy, run the ball with a good O-line, Stefanski calling the plays. Look at what the Eagles did. The Eagles were a very, very efficient offense. With
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
They were a juggernaut.
Yeah, and they were running the ball with Saquon. Running the ball. Fingers crossed. Hey, Nick Chubb? Why can't Nick Chubb come back like Saquon came back? Saquon had a knee injury. He was out for the year. I know Nick had a bad injury, but can you imagine getting a 90% version of Nick Chubb behind a stud O-line with a Joe Flacco-ish type quarterback who's going to, So maybe the Browns, they got a number one. They get 2 number ones with Miles. Next year, maybe that number one could be that quarterback, right?
Yeah, could be.
So a lot of scenarios. Meanwhile, Brooke, we got the Cavs, right? We got the Cavs. And you know what, folks? We may have a Cavs podcast for Cleveland Browns Anonymous. So check your Buzzsprout, Amari? What?
Buzzsprout,
Apple, Spotify. My favorite, Overcast. I love Overcast. So, all right, everybody, here comes some commercials. Talk about what we're about. Riley Properties, Riley Painting and Contracting. So, Amari, you'll be hearing the dulcet tones of Amari Clancy on the commercials. All right, everybody, we'll call it a podcast.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Browns Anonymous podcast with Mike Riley. We have a lot more content on the way as we get this new podcast started. You can also check out some of our other podcasts like the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast and other new ones that will start soon. On any platform that you find yourself listening to us on, feel free to leave us a like or comment or follow us. It always helps.